Howdy, Facebook. It's Miles here. I hope you are well. Happy New Year, and welcome to what is a brand new show for me in 2021. And you know, this is a bit of a landmark moment for me, really. If you've ever watched any of my Facebook lives over the past few years, I'm honoured that you've done that. But these shows are going to be a bit different. If you were watching me doing Facebook Lives a few years ago and I was jumping around in my kitchen, if you've seen any of my short Facebook Lives that I've been doing over the past year or so around the topic of motivation, my lives this year are going to be a lot different. And really, this whole thing has stemmed from some conversations I've been having with friends over the past few years, and really kind of comes down to the fact that in 2021, one of my big things for this year is about being overdoing. You know, with the year that we've just had, 2020, what a crazy year. One of the things it really taught me was how important it is to focus on your character more than you focus on what you actually do. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I take you back to March of 2020, it was a dark time. Like if you don't know me personally, it was a rough time for me. I'm sure it was a rough time for you, right? It's one thing that we probably have universal empathy for is we all went through the start of COVID-19 in our own unique way. And for me personally, you know, my whole world was wrapped up in doing. You know, it was like make more money, succeed. And, you know, I felt like I finally got the money thing figured out. I was presenting seminars and workshops and events all over the country. I was working kind of 10 days a month, and, you know, I was earning a good living, and I had a really good balance of time. And, you know, life was really good, like on the outside anyway, but on the inside, I wasn't happy. You know, I was burnt out. Traveling all over the country was soul destroying. It was emotionally draining. I was effectively selling other people's products, and some of which I didn't really wasn't really passionate about. So I really, on the surface, it seemed like life was really good, but in actual fact, it was it wasn't the best. And you know, obviously that money went to zero in March, which was at first a real tough thing to take. Like, you know, Sati, my wife, was on maternity leave, and I didn't know, like, I knew that we had some savings, but I didn't know how I was going to get us out of this situation that we're in. And, you know, I kind of had a few days, I'm not going to lie, I like, my head was in my hands. Like, I was not in a good place. And I was saying, my life coach at home is my wife, Sati. She's amazing. She probably allowed a full day of self-pity where I just kind of watched TV and sulked about it. And then she said, "What are you going to do?" And she said it in such a way that was really like it was almost like she was calling me to a higher standard, you know, like she was like, "What are you going to do?" Not like, "You need to sort this out," like ultimatum, "What are you going to do?" She was like, "What are you going to do?" And the way she said it, like, I'm probably not quite capturing it, but the way she said it just kind of made me realize that like all the learning, all the seminars, all the personal development, I was not living it. You know, I was like telling people to, you know, go for their dreams, and telling people, you know, I was kind of preaching this message of positivity and motivation. But in that day or 2 days around March, I was not living it. And it took some tough love from Mrs. Grant to really make me realize that, you know, I needed to do something. And so over the past, since March, you know, within 3 months, God somehow guided us to replace the lost income. We were very, I say, lucky, because I believe in, I feel some people don't like the word luck. I like the word luck. I feel like it's a good thing to say that you're lucky, because for me it just amplifies my gratitude. So I'm going to choose to say I was lucky. Lucky that I found myself with the skills to be able to help people through COVID, and also to be able to help my family. And over the past 6-9 months, we've grown, and the coaching has grown. But there's one thing that has really been kind of eating away at me over the past few months, is a want to go a lot deeper, and I want to kind of especially work with men on being more open, being more courageous, and especially being more vulnerable. And today's episode really is about vulnerability. And this episode that I'm sharing with you today probably would not exist if it weren't for the work. I'm just going to make sure my charger is plugged in properly. This episode today really wouldn't exist if it weren't for the work of Brené Brown. Now, if you're not familiar with Brené Brown's work, then first place to start is her Netflix documentary called A Call to Courage. If you've not seen that, it's incredible. But it would not, this episode and the work that I'm going to be doing moving forward would not be kind of coming to the forefront this year if it weren't for the work of Brené Brown. So I've got to give a big shout out to her. But the word vulnerability, and the reason why this episode today is titled Men and Vulnerability, is because a great friend of mine, Tarek, if you're watching, brother, thank you, I love you, several years ago said this quote to me. First time I'd ever heard the word, I think I ever heard the word vulnerability. He said, vulnerability is our greatest asset. And he always used to say that, and I didn't really know what it meant, but now it really makes sense, because one of the things that Brené Brown talks about in the documentary, A Call to Courage, is that courage and vulnerability are one of the same. I think when I first heard the word vulnerability, my mind, the connotations of that were weakness. Like, immediately thought of vulnerability means weakness. But in actual fact, if you look at the dictionary definitions of vulnerability, you will find somewhere in there, I don't know if it's the first line, but you'll find the word courage. And you see, if you ask me to define the word courage, I straight away think strength. So the purpose of this episode today is really to highlight the fact that if vulnerability is courage and courage is strength, then I believe in 2021, one of the most important things that we can do, especially as men, is to have the courage to be more vulnerable. I've got a friend of mine. We have a friend of mine, Martin, who we have this great kind of secret code, which is called we call it need to talk versus want to talk. And what need to talk versus want to talk effectively means is we have this rule, right? Where if one of us is just wanting to chat, just wanting to catch up, then we'll say we want to talk. Like, if we just want to talk about football or rugby or like family or the weather or just general stuff, then we'll say we want to talk, we want to catch up, right? But if we message each other and say, let's say I message Martin and say, hey dude, I need to talk, then that's different, because what that says to Martin is that that's our code word, or our code kind of phrase for we need to drop what we're doing, and the first minute that we are available generally within the next like hour, we will pause what we're doing and we'll get on the phone and have a chat. Because often when we say we need to talk, it's because something's going on in our life, and we don't know how to deal with it, and we need to be vulnerable. And so for me, vulnerability, especially as men, the first thing you've got to do from my experience of being through some horrendously low periods in my life, like bouts of depression, I'll be the first to admit suicidal thoughts is not something that I've ever had. So I can only imagine what it's like to have suicidal thoughts. But I've been low, very low. And knowing that you've got someone, especially a man, that you can text and say, I need to talk in today's day and age, in 2021, in this, this continuing pandemic and economic crisis, is really important. It's really important. And so if you don't have a man that you feel that you can open up to, then the best advice I can give you is to actually decide that you're going to basically just pick a friend who you go, you know what, I'm good right now, but what I want to do is I'd like us to buddy up, right? Like I have a few friends that we do this, and we've decided to kind of buddy up with each other and say, I just want to let you know that, if ever there's a point in your life this year where shit hits the fan and you're in a tough spot, you don't know who to talk to, I want to be a person that you can say, I need a chat. I need a conversation. I need a serious talk so that I can get this off my chest. I always say that vulnerability, like being open, being vulnerable, is like, those facial scrubs. I know this is a funny metaphor, but those facial exfoliating scrubs, those apricot scrubs that I love, and we did face mask night last night in our house. I'm not going to lie, I love a good face mask. But those apricot scrubs, which exfoliate your skin, what they do is they get all the dirt and the toxins and all the impurities out of the skin. Well, I always say that conversation, like powerful, deep conversation with another human being, especially man to man, so to speak, or woman to woman, doesn't have to be that. But I think from an empathy point of view, it can help if you're a masculine male and you're experiencing doubt, worry, concern, speaking to another masculine male may, not necessarily, but may garner greater empathy than if you speak to a feminine woman, because the masculine is designed to achieve, kick ass, hunt, gather food, kind of like prehistoric times. And the feminine is different. The feminine's more of a nurturing kind of raised child, etc. That's just historically how we're genetically wired. So this is not a debate about whether the feminine can empathize or not, because there's a lot of times where I talk to Sati about things that are bothering me, but there is a difference. There's definitely a difference when I talk to Sati about a problem that's a masculine energetic problem versus speaking to a male friend. So I believe that the conversations that we can have around, you're having a tough period, you're not sure what to do about it. I believe that having a powerful conversation with a friend about what's bothering you, what's on your mind, is like exfoliation for the soul. And so my kind of challenge to you this year is to make sure that you have someone or find someone that you can be really open and honest with. And if you're watching this going, I don't have a somebody, then it will maybe take some courage, but trust me, it will be one of the best things you ever do to open up and just pick someone. I had a conversation with a buddy before Christmas, a guy, James Lavers, and we, hey James, if you're watching, love you, brother, happy New Year. And I'd sent James a couple of messages, right? And this was a really, really powerful thing for me. I sent James a couple of messages about us doing some work together. James is incredible at presenting on camera and so much more than that, right? The real psychology of everything I've learned about presenting on camera, I've learned from James. And so I was sending him a message about, I said, hey, like, I'd love us to maybe do some work together, etc. And he called me out. He basically said, look, Miles, I'm going to kind of call you out. You've said this dozens of times before and you've never followed through. I don't want to keep doing this whole buddy back and forth dance with you over private work. Firstly, he said, I'm not available at the moment. And frankly, and this isn't his exact words, but he was like, frankly, it's pissing me off that you kind of just doing this whole back and forth, to-ing and fro-ing, giving giving the come on that you're interested and then pulling back. And, I kind of slept on what he said, and I felt a mixture of emotions from it. I felt bad, I felt guilty, I felt ashamed, because that was not my intention whatsoever. But I felt really bad, and I kind of slept on it. And then I messaged him and said, we had a few messages exchanged. And in the end, I said to him, do you know what, dude? I've realized I don't want private consulting with you right now. What I realize is that the reason why I'm drawn to keep messaging you is because deep down, I feel like we could be friends. I feel that there could be an emotional bond could form between us. And as a masculine male, I didn't know how to say that, because it's a weird thing to say to another man in today's day and age, can we be friends? But when I was a little kid, when I was like 3-4 years old, I'd be the kid on the playground that'd be like, hey, I'm Miles, what's your name? Do you want to play? But yet as an adult, we find ourselves, or I do, we find ourselves in these kind of bubbles. It's like the phrase of the century, isn't it? We find ourselves in these bubbles of friendships, which have either formed because of proximity, workplace, school, personal development seminar. We find ourselves forming friendships, forming bonds, because it's either genetically because we're bonded, or because we end up at some environment that once upon a time we was something that was right for us. And now you fast forward several years and you find that you've only got friends by default. And that's kind of how I feel a little bit. And I made a conscious decision moving into 2021 that I went, you know what, I want to develop more friends. Not develop more friends the way I would have said when I was 21, which was just have friends for the sake of it. But I want to develop friends in a way that actually we get a reciprocal emotional benefit out of being friends, where it's not just surface level conversation. It's really deep conversation where we can do the jokey, pally, buddy thing, but we can also do deep. And we know when it's the time to go deep. And for me, like one of the greatest things is having the courage to, say, hey, like, I would like to be your friend. And get past the whole, hey, how you doing? Yeah, buddy, joke. And that, James called me out on that. And then the following a couple of days later, we had a great conversation, nothing to do with work. We just talked as friends and we had a nice time. And in fact, there's a great movie which springs to mind, which I was telling James about on that video, which is called I Love You, Man. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's Paul Rudd. And he and his fiance get married. She's got loads of friends, and she says to him, like, who are you going to invite? Like, who's going to be your best man? Who's going to be at the wedding? And he's like, oh, and he has no names because he's kind of moved across country and hasn't prioritized friendships because he's fell in love. And to cut a long story short, so he decides that he goes on this quest to find friends initially, kind of fake friends that he's happy to just be at the wedding so that he doesn't look like the guy that has no friends at the wedding. And then what he starts doing is he actually realizes, you know what, I actually do want a real friend. I want a best man that's actually someone that I actually can maybe connect with and be really friends with beyond the wedding. And he goes out and he forms friendships with this guy called Jason Segel. And the moral of the movie is, that he has the courage to put himself out there in a way that socially is probably perceived as quite strange, which is a man actually wanting to befriend a man. And I think that's very vulnerable in today's day and age to do that. But I think it's really, really important that if you don't currently feel that if you're a man watching and you don't feel like you've got another man that you can confide in, then I think it's important that you go, who am I seeing on social media, someone that I've met once that I think, do you know what? I think we could be friends. And actively tell them. If you want to say, I watched this video on vulnerability from our friend Miles, and he said, I should open up and say I want to build new friendships this year. And I thought of you. You were the first person that came to my mind. I thought I'd like to be friends with you. Then I think it's really important do that and to be really vulnerable and honest. So that's it really for today. This is the start of a new series of videos that are going to be coming out this year. There's going to be a couple of other episodes. Me and Mrs. Grant are going to be doing a show together as well, talking about parenting and marriage and how to kind of keep the spark alive in the face of having a toddler now. So we're going to be kind of diving into some topics on that as well. So I'm really excited about what this year is going to bring. If you've got comments, thoughts on this episode, if you've learned something in this episode and you want to kind of send me a message and let me know what you've got out of it, I'd be really honored to continue the conversation with you, because I truly believe that in 2021, if you invest more energy and effort in investing in your, what I call your inner money, which is your kind of grow yourself on the inside, kind of being over doing, then you're going to get all the happiness that you're ultimately after. Because happiness, as cliche as it sounds, is an inside job. It's not an outside job. This year's taught me that, well, last year rather, because we're in 2021, has taught me that, like, if you prioritize who you're becoming as a person over what you're achieving, not that achieving isn't important, but as Tony Robbins beautifully says, success is a science, but fulfillment is an art. And it's really important, I believe, that you figure out exactly what fulfills you. And I think that one of the first principles of that as a man in 2021 is kind of having the courage to be open, honest, real, and more vulnerable with each other. That's it. Episode 1, The Fucked Up Man. Hope you've enjoyed it. God bless. Have a great day. See you soon.